Hi everyone, this is Catherine from Life on the Scrap Beach, and this is the second of my tutorial videos and projects for Graphic 45's featured artist blog post. This second project is a Rolodex style mini album called Kids, which is all photos of my brother, my sister, and myself growing up, and features the Graphic 45 Listserk paper collection. So I'm going to start by using the Tim Holtz Baroque die to cut all my pages. And for me, it's just easier to cover both sides of a square piece of cardstock with my patterned paper and then run it through the die cutter all at once so that I only have to make one cut per page and I don't have to try to line the shaped papers up and glue them exactly right. It will cut all three at the same time and it'll be perfectly adhered. Once I've cut out all of my pages, then I'm just going to go around the edges in black distress ink. And I'm going to get started creating the Rolodex. And I've cut a 7.5 inch by 12 inch piece of paper, and I'm marking an inch in on the long sides and a 1/2 inch in on the short sides. And this is what's going to form the triangular piece that will hold my project up. I'm going to be weighting my piece with sand, which is why I only need a 12-inch piece of paper. But if you're not going to weight it down, you need to make sure the 3 panels of your triangular piece are all the same length so that it will be more stable on your desk. And so all I'm doing here is taking 2 4.5 by 5.5 pieces and gluing them at either end of the piece of paper and making sure they're adhered down with a brayer. Then I'm taking a 1.5 inch by 5.5 inch piece and I'm going to put it in the center, and this is going to form the base of my sort of Rolodex triangular piece on what the album sits on. And again, this is the piece that needs to be the same size as the other 2 pieces if you're not going to put weights inside. And then I cut the corners and I leave about 1/8 of an inch of paper between where I cut and where the chipboard is. And you're going to tuck that around to make a professional corner later. I like to start on the long sides when I do my glue. And so what I'm doing is while the paper is dry, I'm just taking my bone folder and I'm making all of my creases. That way, when my paper's got the wet glue all over it, it will be easier for me to handle. You can see that it just moves right into position. And then what I'm going to do is to make sure the gutters have the paper adhered well, I'm just, while the glue is still wet, I'm going to fold it and fold it and fold it and fold it several different times, several different ways, and that's going to ensure that all of those creases are solid. And here I'm taking my bone folder and I'm just tucking that little extra piece of cardstock that we left. You can see how I folded it over the corner. What that means is when we put glue on the short sides and adhere the short sides down, that the corners of the chipboard are going to be completely wrapped in paper and there's not going to be any exposed chipboard whatsoever. And it's going to look really professional, like the cover of a hardbound book. Now, this is a hole guide. I'm just using this to punch my holes. This is a piece of chipboard that is the same width as my triangular base. And I've marked the center and I'm just drawing a line along the center. What I'm going to do is I'm going to center one of my die cut pieces and mark my holes, and then take this over to the 2 sides of the base and punch the holes on either side. Now you're getting an idea of how it functions. So I've closed it and I've added a binder clip and I'm going to trace the triangular pieces. If you are not going to include weights inside of it, you actually don't have to close off the sides. You could just decorate the inside with an additional sheet of pattern paper. So what I've done is I've traced the outside of the box, and now I'm taking a ruler and I'm marking lines 1/8 of an inch inside the lines that I traced. And that's the width of my chipboard covered with paper. So this is going to make the triangular piece is the right size for my project. And then I'm going to erase the original lines that I drew. Now I'm going to draw a line a 1/2 inch outside of the lines. And this is where I'm going to have my flaps that fold back away from my triangle and adhere to the inside of the box. And you'll see what I mean when it's all cut out. It'll make more sense. I'm now cutting it out, and I'm using a ruler and my craft knife just to get it really straight, because it's kind of funky angles. It's hard to use in a paper trimmer. So there's just one more piece to cut. You're going to cut your 2 corners off, and then you're going to cut your 2 angles off. So you should have this sort of Washington Monument shaped piece when you're done, which you then trace onto the back of the piece of pattern paper you want to use for the sides of your project, and then cut it out. Once it's cut out, you need to score in a 1/2 inch from either side, from all 3 sides, both the 2 long sides and the 1 bottom piece, and then fold them back, and you should get a triangular piece that fits right inside your box. Okay, so now you need to add your rings, and you want the hinge of your rings to be on the inside of the box, so the openings are on the outside and accessible to you. And then I use about a 1/2 cup of sand as my weight. Just put it in a Ziploc baggie. And then I add liquid glue to the sides of my triangular piece. Make sure it fits in there, wipe away any excess glue, and then I use a binder clip to hold it shut until the glue is dry. And then once the sand is in and both sides of paper are added, I run a line of hot glue along the opening and glue it completely shut, so it forms a completely sealed box, which I hold shut with binder clips. And you don't have to worry about doing that last. You'll still be able to open your rings even though that is glued shut. So you'll be able to work with the album once the base is closed up like that. And so this is the base of the album. So that's pretty much how it's made. And now I'm just going to decorate the album. So here's the picture I'm going to use for my front cover, and I'm covering it on the back with pattern paper that coordinates with the page on the other side, because it will show around the edges. And I did that with all my photos, but I'm only going to show it to you this one time. Then I used a large piece of dimensional adhesive to add my rosette. Now I'm going to show you how on the I've got my title, and it's not pressed down, it's just slightly set down. I just wanted to see what it looks like from the front and the back, and I saw that my letters hung off the back a little bit. So I'm actually just dipping them into a jar of gold embossing powder, and I'm just going to heat emboss that so that when they're stuck down you see the gold. And also going to adhere them with a liquid glue so they'll just be a little bit stronger. And now I'm going to show you how I made the rosette. I took a piece of paper that was 1 inch by 12 inches, and I'm scoring it at every 1/4 inch. And then I'm folding it back and forth so that it makes this accordion shape. And then I took a piece that's a 1/2 inch by 12 inches, and I'm scoring it at a 1/4 inch. And again, I'm going to fold it back and forth to make an accordion shape that matches my original piece. And then I'm going to use liquid glue to layer them on top of each other. So I'm going to line my smaller piece up with one edge of my wider piece. I'm just going to match them up, and then I am going to glue the 2 ends together to form one continuous loop and glue it down to a piece of chipboard. Then I'm going to add a button to the top and decorate the edges with a coordinating color of glitter glue, and then move on to the next page. And I have made a template that is a 1/4 inch smaller on all sides than my Baroque die, and I'm going to trace that on the back of my photos. So some of the pages will have very large photos that match the shape of the Baroque die. And I just trace them with a fine point Sharpie and then cut them out with my scissors. And I also went around the edges of these photos with a Krylon leafing pen in gold just so that they'd have a gold edge. And now I'm taking one of the tags from the paper collection and inking the edges. And even though this album is not circus themed, I can still use the tags because they're double-sided and they have pattern paper on the back. So I'm going to add my title, which is Stomp, because my sister is being stomped by a dinosaur. And I'm just going to add a piece of bling and then attach this to my photo with some glue dots, and then attach my photo to my page with dimensional adhesive. And again, I use a lot of dimensional adhesive, but that's just because I don't like my photos to sink. So I'm moving on to the next page where I'm adding my photo and another rosette. And I used a lot of rosettes in this album. It was a way to keep my embellishments pretty simple, but to still incorporate a lot of different colors into the album. And I added my title, which was Ride. And now I'm moving on to the next page, same thing, adding a photo, adding my title, and adding a rosette. And this just brings a lot of fun, vintage decoration and bright colors into the album, which is all pictures of us from the summer growing up. So now I'm working on the next page, and I'm adding this photo of my sister on a swing set, and again adding another rosette. And you can see up at the top of the screen how I've dipped these letters again in the gold embossing powder before adding them with my liquid glue. And these letters say fly. And now we're going to work on the next page, which has another large photo. And I'm going to put the photo down with pop dots. And then I'm going to add a tag. And I'm just going to loop 2 pieces of ribbon through the ends of the tag slide. Again, this tag slides from the collection. And I flipped it over to the reverse. I'm just going to staple the 2 pieces of ribbon in place briefly because I'm going to add these star die cuts from the collection over each staple with a pop dot to give it more texture and a little bit more fun. And then I'm going to go in and add my title, which is Yum. And I'm just using a quick stick to help me with handling these small letters, and then I'm going around them in a Sharpie pen just to give them a little bit more definition and add a shadowed look. I'm just going to glue down my tag, and then that page is ready to go. And I'm going to do pretty much the same thing. I've added my title to another die cut from the collection. This one said Le Cirque, but I've covered it with wishes, and just adding my large photo. And then moving on to the next page, which is another one of the simpler pages with the large photos. Use this die cut from the collection, and I'm going to add my caption, which is Splish and Splash. It's a picture of my sister at a swimming pool in the summer, and then adding some bling on either side, and then adding it to the picture. And again, you're just using the dimensional tape to add it to the picture so that there's just a little more interest on these simpler pages. And now I'm going to make a pocket, and I'm scoring at 1/2 inch, 3.5 inches, and then I'm going to cut it at 7.5 inches, and then score 1/2 inch from the bottom. Basically, your dimensions just need to be 1/4 inch longer and 1/4 inch wider than your picture. And then just fold the small flaps in like that, and then fold the second of the 2 larger flaps over. And you have a quick and easy pocket. And this will work for anything you want to put in it. You just adjust your measurements so that each of those large panels is 1/4 inch wider and 1/4 inch taller than what you want to put in it. And so I've just cut a notch in it with a paper punch. And now I'm checking to make sure that my photo fits in it, which it does. And the notch is so I can put this little tiny rosette I made, which I don't recommend making these tiny ones by hand. That one gave me more trouble than any of the others. Then just adding a liquid glue, and then I'm going to add my photo. And then I'm adding liquid glue to the back of it so I can glue it down to my page. And I'm just going to wipe away this glue from anywhere that it's not covered. and then add my title. And the Scotch Quick Dry wipes off very cleanly with no residue, I found. So my title is Golf Pros, and I'm just going to add it with a liquid glue. And I ran out of R's in the font that I wanted to use, but I just cut the second hump off an M, and it worked just fine. So I'm just moving on to the last page where I have added my photo, and I'm adding my rosette, and I'm just going to add my title, which is Laugh. And all of these just go right onto the rings, and you have a very nice decorative element for a desk. I'm going to give this to my mom for Mother's Day since it has all pictures of her kids, but this would also work very well for calendars or recipe albums or pretty much anything that you could want. So here it is completely assembled, and you can see the first page. I'm just going to flip through it pretty quickly. I'm going to go through one side and then I'm going to turn it around and go through the other side. But you can see that these papers from the Lacert collection worked perfectly for my bright summery photos. All of these photos were predominantly taken in the summers. And even though these photos are not circus photos, the paper was perfect for them. So you don't have to use this paper collection just for trips to the circus. It's much more versatile than that. And then here you can see what I put into the pocket. So all of us playing mini golf. And so when you display it on a desk, you can turn it to one side or the other, and you can constantly add new photos or pages to refresh it as you wanted. Maybe do like a my favorites things or my favorite photos, or make it for grandma as a brag book, and you could send her new pages periodically so she could update it with the latest activities of her grandkids. Or for a dad's desk, same thing, just send him to work with some new pages every once in a while. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. That's the second of my projects for the Graphic 45 featured artist blog post. Check their blog or my YouTube channel for the other two projects. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the projects.